I'm Sanket Upadhyay. You see, we're discussing an extremely important issue today. We always take up important issues, but this one is particularly special. India is at the cusp of taking a very, very important decision. This is a decision it has taken in the past. The courts have taken those decisions, but the courts themselves have overturned the decision as well. Politically, this decision has never been made. At least there is never a consensus. But the point is, there were many things that used to happen in this country, or in the world for that matter, because the society wanted it that way. And then situations changed, societies evolved, and eventually people did. Is it time for the same thing to happen in this case as well? Enough of building up. The simple question that we are asking today is this. Is the time to legalize same-sex marriage has come? Has that time come in the history of this country? How should that decision be taken? All those people who argue against same-sex marriage, what are their arguments? Should there be a very honest effort at making sure that you reach out to people and not brush this aside as the concept of the urban elite? After all, right here on this channel, we got you reports of so many people who are facing massive societal stigma in rural India. These are not the urban elite. Why do we want to do this to our own people? To hide their identity? Has the time come to acknowledge same-sex marriage? Let's put this to a huge discussion. We have 8 panelists right now, and we are going to have 53 minutes of not a big fight, but let's say a big discussion where the pros and cons will be discussed so that you can make an informed decision. And this affects one and all because we need to normalize our discourse around this subject so that people can speak about it. Society can speak about it, and trust me, the moment society starts speaking about it, the netas will follow. Otherwise, they will not. I would like to welcome our guests. Rahul Ishwar is an activist, joins us on satellite. Thank you very much for joining us. Raga De Silva, LGBT influencer and author of Untold Lies. Joydeep Sengupta is a petitioner, joining us from France. Thank you very much. In the studio, one by one, Deshratan Nigam is a political analyst and a senior lawyer. Geeta Bhatt is a political analyst. We also have on the show Priyanka Tandon, is an activist. Thank you very much for joining us. Aditi Anand is a petitioner in this case, and Sonal Gyani is an LGBTQ activist. Thank you very much for joining us. On this show, what we do is all of our speakers get 1 minute of uninterrupted time right at the very start. And then after that, the floor is open. People can interject in a polite way, of course. Let's begin with our guests who are not in the studio. I would like to begin with you, Rahul Ishwar. Your 1 minute time for your opening comments begins now.
Sangeji, 3 points. First of all, we all agree, I believe there is no need for homophobia, and homophobia should be discouraged. There should not be any kind of discrimination, and homophobia is a wrong thing. But there are very reasonable voices across the world, like Pope Francis, who rightly said, who am I to judge? But they also have reservations in giving the marriage status to the homosexual marriages. Second, going by the Supreme Court arguments, I am concerned that people are being too liberal with truth. For example, even seniors in courts are misrepresenting Swami Ayyappa, who joined Shaivites and Vaishnavites as something like a homosexual marriage product. So people are being too unrealistic with things that needs to be checked. And I'm afraid whether we are going into too woke areas when an Honorable Chief Justice going to the area of saying there is no absolute concept of a biological man and a woman. Yes, we need to evolve to a more middle ground, consensus, no discrimination. But are we going too woke is a legitimate doubt that many people around India are having. I believe that kind of far left liberal woke extreme is something that we shouldn't go. But yes, there should be meaningful discussion, sensitization and education so that people can find a much more meaningful consensus.
Okay. You have used this word woke a lot. The idea is to move beyond, these stereotypical definitions of how people feel and have a more evolved understanding of why these things may be important. For instance, why same-sex marriage important, why legal recognition is important is because you get a host of rights of married couples, you get to adopt children, you buy a joint property, you make each other a nominee in insurance, sign hospital forms, take medical decisions for each other, apply for passport as a couple, get couples tax benefits and take joint loans. None of these rights are available to Indian citizens, right? So this is a problem. Raga De Silva, your opening comments.
Thank you. Sanket, you just said none of those rights are available to Indian citizens. Actually, they're not available to me as well, although I am not an Indian citizen. I have an OCI for India. I am legally married in the UK to my same-sex partner. We got married last year. I've been with her for 16 years. We've raised children over the last 16 years together. Our children are now adults. They're 25 years old. So, but when I get on a flight to India, I become single again. So those rights that you were talking about, apart from not even having the respect of that a couple should get, we don't have any other rights either in India. All the conversations and all the arguments that the opposition has been making about that, children from same-sex marriages will have mental health issues. Sorry. I mean, I'm not a perfect mother. I don't claim to be a perfect mother. I don't want to be a perfect mother. But yes, there are parents like us, women, same-sex couples, same-gendered couples who have brought up children, raised children, and really functionally. So we can't make those blanket statements. In terms of, same-sex marriage, I keep saying it's not same-sex marriage. We talk about marriage equality. When we have, gay people have lunch, we don't call it gay lunch. When we drive a car, we don't call it, gay car. So why are we calling marriage same-sex marriage? Let's call it marriage equality.
Sure.
So we can all be equal. We can have equal rights.
Okay. Joydeep Sen-Gupta, your opening comments.
Thank you. So I am an OCI holder, so an overseas citizen of India, and I'm based in France. I grew up in India, and I've lived and worked out between France, Canada, and the US. I'm married to an American citizen, and I have a daughter as well, who I'm raising with my husband. And just as my fellow panelists just mentioned, the minute I go to India, I go from being a married person, a father to my daughter, to being single again, which legally makes life very, very difficult for all of the things you pointed out at the beginning, right? Hospital visitation, immigration, opening bank accounts, just things that have no impact on anyone else except on my family. I'm a petitioner in the cases that are before the Supreme Court right now. And our argument is essentially that there are 4 fundamental rights in the Constitution of India which are being violated by denying us these rights. The right to life, liberty, and equality. So equality is such a fundamental principle in Indian Constitution. Article 15, which ensures, among other things, no discrimination on the basis of sex. So that's a fundamental right that's being violated by denying the right to marriage.
Okay.
And then the Article 19 of freedom of expression, right?
Sure.
So the right to express your identity as an LGBT person and the right to privacy.
Joydeep, if you allow me, I'm going to come. I'll circle back to you because your 1 minute time is up. Let's get in opening comments from others also, and I'll come back to you. Desh Ratan Nigam.
Sanket, in fact, today, if you look at our entire civilization and culture, there is no doubt that such togetherness, I'm not calling marriage, was always recognized, but they were not recognized as a marriage, as a social institution. Because it had a lot of complexities and backward-forward linkages, as you also mentioned, with various other institutions, what will happen to them. And as an individual, they all have their rights because the Constitution says no discrimination on the basis of sex. Individual rights, fundamental rights are available, but not as a married couple. So that distinction has to be maintained. And secondly, over the period of time, this evolving idea of marriage, who decides? It's a social phenomena. It has to be decided at the social level from the grassroots upwards. not other way around by the courts. Otherwise, you will have judgment not being followed. A judgment ahead of its time has no relevance in society. Remember Jallikattu, it was not followed. Remember that. It continued to happen. Remember Sabrimala is not being followed. They're still following that. So therefore one has to be very careful. You know, the majesty and respect of the judiciary goes down if such kind of judgments come. Because judiciary needs to be respected. And there are various other issues which
we'll discuss. And I'm going to ask you this question, that if we all come to the consensus that you have to be a little bit more evolved to the sensitivities of the people, the problems that were highlighted right now by
evolution is a social
couples.
phenomena. Evolution is a social phenomena. Remember that.
No, but then again, who will exact change in the society? I'm going to come back to it. Let's take opening comments and we'll come back. Professor Geeta Bhatt.
Sanketji, if you look at the Bharatiya culture and the scriptures, we see that the concept of third gender or homosexuality, it was something which was never something which was not a part of the society. There are many such scriptures. There was, Tritiya Prakriti. It is mentioned in many of the scriptures, you can say. We can see Rishi Vatsayan's Kama Sutra. All these illustrations show that they were always a part and parcel of society. And as Shratanji said, yes, as a social union, marriage, because marriage, at least within Hindus, it is considered as a sanskar. So hence it was not per se as a social union was not recognized. Now the point is here, the discussion which is revolving around this issue, which needs a much larger debate and deliberation, before which the Honorable Supreme Court actually should come out with a certain decision. The fact remains that here the whole discussion which is coming up in the Supreme Court is basically revolving around the Special Marriage Act. A marriage act which actually came into being for people who were of different faiths and were not in a position to marry because of that. Their special provision was made for them. Now, here the kind of deliberations which are being given and lot of examples being quoted from European countries and from United States of America. Let us also keep in mind that the United States of America is the same country where abortion today, it stands illegal, which is very much in contrast to how we have taken this issue.
You can always choose to pick what you want.
So every society
and evolve as a society.
That's the point is, so every society rather
that's the Indian constitution for you. We picked up the best from every other constitution.
Absolutely, and within the Indian constitution, we also have uniform civil code, to which there is no constitution bench even created till date. Such an important issue, which is
Geeta-ji,
a part
one subject at a time. If we go into uniform civil code, that's a different debate altogether.
It is a larger subject where larger participation, which is not been happening.
Opening comments first. A few more opening comments left. Aditya.
So, thank you for having me. First of all, I just want to say this is not woke or intellectual. This is my life. And that's where I'm coming from. There's a couple of primary arguments that have been made. One, that this is something for the legislature and not within the ambit of the court. In which case, I would say the legislature has done a terrible job. They have not done their job, in fact. It's been 5 years since 377 and a number of judgments since. This has not even come up for discussion in the legislature. So the denial of my rights being granted in a timely manner is the equivalent of the denial of my rights. Number one. Number two, the other big argument that is being made of this elite urban, I think we're running dangerously close to the same hackneyed minuscule minority ideas. I think it's a distraction. I think news channels should not give wind to it. It is not a legal argument. We are in a court of law. So far, I have not heard a single tenable legal argument that justifies the denial of these rights for me. I do not think that society is living in the dark ages. I'm living proof of that. I think so is Sonal.
Okay.
Yes, and then we can circle back.
Sure. Sonal.
I'm really happy for all the opening comments that have come in. I just want to come in from the perspective of communities. I am an activist working and running organizations in support for the community. And very recently, one of our surveys that we did in fact through the Family Planning Association of India, which was a survey on lesbian, bisexual, transmasculine persons' needs. What it brought and shed light on was that marriage pressure was one of the major concerns of the community. And it was leading to severe mental health, severe health issues for this particular community. So
It's not even not having the rights, but even the existing rights, existing way in which marriage exists, because it doesn't recognize what is it doing to our communities. The second bit is that continuously we are told that, same-sex marriage has not existed earlier, things like that. To that I want to say it has existed earlier. What is new is the codification and the bringing of personal laws, which is a social construct in fact. And society can continue to construct it again.
Okay. Priyanka.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me on your show. I completely respect the decision, but I think it should not be made on the present situation right now, which is going on in the country. But we should also consider this decision can affect the coming generation of our country as well. So on a very lighter note, there are couples who ways of looking for marriage in life. One is religious, one is social, and one is biological, and of course one is logical. The logical should be also there.
Okay.
According to me. And I think the world started with the Adam and Eve, not with the Eve and Eve. And today, with the reviews of today, it seems like the world will end up with Eve and Eve and Adam and Adam. This is my reviews on that.
Okay. Let's open this up for a discussion now. And Aditi, you addressed the word woke, right? Because this, we see that this is used a lot. And I would say this is often used in a context to contextualize any viewpoint which is unfavorable, right, to a certain few. Do you think that it is an argument of convenience to box the belief and being of certain individuals in this one word?
Absolutely.
Narrow definition.
It's a super convenient word. It's like whenever I don't want to address a question.
Call someone woke. What does it mean, by the way? I have no idea.
I mean, to me personally, I think being woke is perhaps an extreme version of thinking about social justice, but I think that being extremely concerned about social justice is better than not being extremely unconcerned about social justice. Like, this is the better place to be. Look, I think, and let's, if we keep ourselves confined to this argument, I think it's become super convenient to sort of just put this down to the fact that, the voices that are coming out the loudest are people who are from an urban demographic or people who represent a certain sort of privilege. The reason for that is that we've been very lucky. And we've come from families and from backgrounds where we were given a safe platform of being able to express ourselves, and it was still very difficult. It was really difficult. That is why you're hearing our voices. But that does not mean that the voices that you're not hearing are not voices that you should hear. These are voices that need to be heard. And the very fact that people make this argument of urban elite or wokeness is essentially pushing those voices further and further into a dark place of oppression. Everyone talks about psychological damage and what is happening to those young children today who are suffering the psychological damage of the things that people are saying and the things that are being said about them. I think that the idea of wokeness should be completely removed from any conversation on legal cases. It is not a legal argument.
Sonal, issues of sexual orientation, preference, choice, all of this being dumbed down to, why don't you go and talk to a counselor, right? I'm sure you must have heard of all these arguments. Do you feel that there is a problem, as Mr. Deshatan Nigam said, that if you try to implement this by law, by force, legally, then it will not be accepted by the society, thus creating an even worse situation for the community?
I don't think
and then what does one do?
Sure. I don't think I agree with that. So I'm going to begin from taking off from where Aditi left, actually. I think this opinion that, all the petitioners are urban is also misinformed. If you look at 3 petitioners within the Supreme Court current listings itself, one of them is Akai Padmashali, the second is Zainab Patel. Both trans people, they have begged on streets, they have had to go through, they had to do sex work to earn money because of the situations they found themselves in. Thirdly, InfoSen, that is the Integrated Network for Sexual Minorities, which is a network of 200 organizations across smaller towns of India. So saying that is, first of all, within the code itself is false. The second bit of it, when I talk about working with these communities, the thing is, even if you push them in counseling, the point is that the reason that we have mental health issues or we are facing challenges is because of the way the institutions of the state around us are. They don't recognize us.
They don't recognize.
So even if I work on myself, there is no point because my family is afraid because I'm not getting married. There is no other concept of marriage other than state marriage. I can't be out at my workplace. They don't recognize me at my workplace. If I have mental health issues in terms of coming out to my college, in my college or in my to my professors, there are no spaces created and there is no, really, it's not like the institution is taking it upon themselves to protect people who are out in these spaces. So even if you push us to counseling, it doesn't really help. What it does is, yes, it, makes us more empowered to fight for our rights, but that's where it goes. That's where it kind of ends. The buck stops at the state,
Not the courts, the state.
State and the court as well. And the other argument, right, that go to the parliament. We've done it. Shashi Tharoor, also this part, NCP, Supriya Sule, they have all tried to, put in bills into the parliament to discuss issues around same-sex marriage. No, they didn't even let it introduce. Forget about a discussion. The bill was not even introduced. Now, if the parliament is going to take its own sweet time, I'm not going to wait till, I'm dead before getting married, right?
Yeah.
So there needs to be some sort of urgency. And that's what we are saying.
Okay.
Enough is enough. Give it to us right now. And if you are saying, this technicality, that technicality, do your work.
You heard Deshatha Nigam. He said that if the courts take a decision, then there will be a backlash from the society.
So I think, I'll tell you something from the last 2018.
The example of Jallikattu.
Before 2018, sir, people were very negative and non-supportive of the community. We have seen a sea change from then to now. The number of people who are out, the number of families who are coming out and speaking, the number of workplaces who are hiring openly. It's a hugely different world. Look at the young people, they are already out. We couldn't even imagine coming out to our parents, to our friends. These are people who are just walking into the workplace proudly. It's a huge difference.
Sure. Rahul Ishwar, I want to bring you in here. You see, I'm quoting Justice D.Y. Chandrachud, and he talks about this not just being a physical relationship, but an emotional relationship. He says, and I quote, "Act of decriminalizing homosexuality contemplates same-sex marriage-like relationships. These relationships are not just physical, but more of a stable emotional relationship. It requires us to redefine the evolving notion of marriage." Do you feel that we are, when we argue against same-sex marriage, not evolving in our notion of what the institution of marriage is? Rahul Ishwar.
Two submissions with due respect to Chandrachudji, who is a great legal luminary. See, the first part is true. Everyone knows that there is an emotional relationship, there is a personal connect, and nobody is against loving and living together. But the whole debate is whether the marriage registration or giving the status of marriage to homosexual couples, as like heterosexual couple, which was practiced for centuries. That's the crux of the debate. And second thing, like Deshatha Nigamji rightly pointed out, for example, take the case of Shabrimala case. I was in jail for weeks altogether for the protest. We have all seen that social acceptance should come first, before any kind of legal acceptance. Here, I would urge the community members to try for more education, more sensitization, so that social acceptance is the yardstick. The legal acceptance may
Rahul
or may not.
Ishwar, how long do you want the members of this community to wait?
No, to be,
till what time? Because the argument is that it's 69 years and counting.
Yeah, if I can be very honest and forthcoming, the Indian national media is very supportive of the community. The judges, by and large, are very supportive of the community. Justice Chandrachudji is going to what can be perceived as a bit to the extreme left liberal sense of even going to the gender politics.
I hope you know who you are talking about.
Yeah, that's the reason why I didn't use the word second time.
Yeah,
we all know.
This insinuation of left liberal.
No, I have highest respect for him. But please remember these statements like there is no absolute concept of biological man and biological woman is scientifically not right too. So you have to have a sense of measure and balance. at some point of time. I believe everyone in the right frame of the mind will not agree with that state of statement of our Honorable Chief Justice, because that's scientifically not true. So there are many aspects that need to be debated. Yes,
Yeah.
one thing is sure, there needs to be more accepting and respecting of the community. There are a variation in
No, but then
behavior.
that is already happening. As Sonal just pointed out, you do see and you do observe a sea change in the way the society perceives members of this community.
And if I may shortly
Yeah,
interject.
sure.
During the judgment, the verdict that came out about Section 377, it was in fact the
This is
court that
2009 or 2013?
2018.
2018.
It was the Supreme Court that directed the center and the state government to in fact sensitize governments and to sensitize public institutions. They didn't do their job. And they've not done their job, and people turn around and ask the community, why don't you sensitize? Why don't you sensitize? And we have taken on the burden of informing people also. You look at the content that's been created by queer influencers. And I feel that when is the state going to take responsibility? Why is it squarely on my shoulder? You don't want to do your work, I'm doing it for you. And then you're asking me to wait without any clear date in mind. So I'm happy with the urgency that the CJI is showing. It's about time.
Deshatan Nigam and Professor Geeta Bhatt, one by one. Mr. Nigam, you talk about society not accepting change. But you heard two people right here who said that society is. Right? So, should we then, I want to understand from you, are you fundamentally opposed to this concept, or you are highlighting the concerns that it will not be accepted by the society, and that's why the Supreme Court must not enter into this?
See, the fact is, when the population of India was 120 crore, 58 crores were married. That's the data I just Googled in. Which means roughly about 50%. And that does not include the other marriages, because marriage definition is very clearly given in our laws. So 58 crore versus how many? Which clearly gives a statistical data before you. This for the statistical purpose, because such kind of question was asked in the court.
I'm just trying to understand the point that you're making.
The point I am making, that whether it is an urban elitist phenomena or the judge had asked specifically they told the central government, you don't have any data. Data can be inferred from here. See, normal marriages in India, out of 120 crore when the population number was that, 58 crore. And the rest were probably unmarried and I'm not including, because there were divorced people also out here or separated, but on the concept of marriage. The evolving idea of marriage is a social phenomena. The marriage is a social phenomena rooted in our society. Now, if you recall the hijab case, a very important point was laid, which is obviously pending in Supreme Court. The institution has its own rights versus individual rights. The institutional rights were given preference over individual rights, the fundamental rights. Here the society as an institution has its own rights. Family as a basic constituent unit, because it will affect directly in many related phenomena out there. So society as somebody which wants a peaceful existence, law and order, peace in the society, it also has its own right versus individual rights. That needs to be adjudicated. This has yet not been argued in the Supreme Court. Let me again. Now, when people talk of Special Marriage Act, how does a court ascertain the intention? What was the intention in making this particular act? People say the word person is used, therefore everybody is included. But if you look at the parliamentary debates of that point of time, same sex was never discussed, it was between man and women. So if you have to know the intention, what was the intention? It had to be biological between man and women, and the subsequent sections, the age of bride and bridegroom, who can file a petition for divorce, husband and wife. So everything has been very clearly. If the separate law comes on this subject by the parliament, that's what I'm saying, apart from many other, social complexities and backward and forward linkages you have to go to the parliament because it's a social phenomenon, not a legal phenomenon. Please understand, it's not that tomorrow if the parliament makes a law, we need to accept it because there is a wider acceptance to it. And secondly,
the whole point about who do you want to accept? Where does the burden lie? Burden of acceptance.
See, acceptance
on the people who believe in this, or the people who have to actually come around
See, the people in a democracy, how the system functions, whether you like it or you don't like it, the majority makes the laws. Yes, even today, first past the post system is the democratic
again, I mean,
principles.
at the cost of someone else's
No. Please
rights.
understand. Please understand.
Yeah, sure.
Beliefs
Professor
and
Bhatt,
rights.
yeah.
It's again I'm saying society's rights versus individual rights.
Okay, Professor
That's
Bhatt
very
and then
important.
Raga
That's
De
very
Silva. She's
important.
been waiting. Yeah.
Yeah,
May I
Sanketji, see,
interrupt
Yes, I'll come to both of you. One moment. Professor Bhatt.
Sanketji, first of all, when the state intervention was being discussed over here, if you observe in the last couple of years, there are many historic changes which have come with the government in 2019 brought the Transgenders Act, where how they they need to be treated, what are their fundamental rights. All this has been laid down. So much so that even today recruitment of transgenders is taking place in the central paramilitary forces also. So there are various steps in the last couple of years. The government has come out with many progressive steps. In university forms earlier there used to be only male and female option. Now there is also a third gender option in all the central universities. So these changes have come which needs to be acknowledged. Along with it, when we come to this particular issue, just like Deshji mentioned about the Special Marriage Act, if you look at the Special Marriage Act, where my observation is the way the hearing is going in the court, where time and again what is being brought up is that we don't want to go into personal laws. Therefore, what you do is you just remove the word where a man and a woman has been used and use either spouse or something like some alternative word is to be used. The point is that if you are going to do that, then the whole motive for which the Special Marriage Act was created, that itself will be, that will not stand.
Then what is the solution?
The point, just a minute. Also, you see, and you are trying to redefine, if you want to redefine the word marriage, and if you want to do that, like the Honorable Supreme Court has mentioned time and again during the hearings, it is important to note that there are various other stakeholders which will be at receiving end. And my submission here is that it is the women who are going to be at the receiving end once you remove the word, because there are many laws which are there for protecting women rights. For example, Sexual Harassment of Workplace Act, 2013, whether it is the Dowry Act. And similarly, you are talking of giving 33% reservation to women, and we are time and again telling that the government is not doing it. So the moment you try to define what a man stands for, a woman stands for, by the Honorable Supreme Court, and also defining marriage, there are the ramifications are going to be really very deep.
Okay, I think one point that Raga De Silva, I want to come to you now, and then also Mr. Joydeep. You see, a lot has been said about society will not accept, or if this is imposed by the courts, there will be a backlash from the society. Now, my point is, in the past, on a number of occasions, we have seen that society was okay with dowry. Society was okay with, I don't like to call it honor killing, dishonor killing. A section of the society was okay, if we go long back in history, with the sati pratha also. So if you let society dictate everything, I know it cannot be something abnormal which you just impose or thopo on the society. But the point is that society left to itself had a lot of problems, but then it got corrected over time. And these concepts may have appeared revolutionary or unbelievable back then, but change happened.
So I agree. I've got 2 points to make on this. One, that society always, who's society first of all? Society is us. We do the othering. I'm a living example of this, exactly like what Aditi said earlier. 20 years ago, when my story came out, when I was outed by my mother, who is a traditional Mangalorean woman, had a really major reaction. She nearly tried to kill me. So that is society. 20 years now, from then to now, I'm from the same family. My Mangalorean family is the same Mangalorean family. But they are very accepting, they're very loving towards me. I'm now invited, given the respect along with my spouse or partner. So society has evolved, society is evolving. As Sonal also said earlier, there's a lot of representation. People like us are coming out, influencers are using a lot of their voice to talk to people and say, like, this is who we are, and I'm sorry, I'm going to use the word normal, because people want to believe that we are abnormal. It is not unnatural. Society will evolve, will continue to evolve. Law is very important. People follow law. And that is something that we have to remember. I'm going to just make another point about what Priyanka said. Priyanka, I know that we have heard that, there was an Adam and there was Eve. But reality is there is Adam and there is Steve as well, and there is Eve and Eve as well. It is time for us to all accept it. My question is why do we have, I know minorities, but why do we have to wait for the straight people, the heterosexuals to tell us how we should live our lives? My being a homosexual is not taking away your heterosexuality. So chill.
Yeah, sure.
They
Okay,
are-
one by one. One by one, Mr. Joydeep has been waiting for a while.
Yes.
Joydeep.
Thank you. So I want to thank you for all the participants, and I really appreciate this debate. And I do agree with Mr. Nigam that, there is likely to be backlash. And I think the example that you saw in the US in abortion, it's a good example of the court's decisions and the society back and forth. But I think this is a fundamental truth about a democracy. What we cannot forget that India is a constitutional, secular democracy, right? And in a democracy, people vote the legislature, right? And if you only go by the legislature, it'll always be the tyranny of the majority, right? So the majority who have the power will vote against the rights of the minorities often, right? So what we have is the Constitution of India, which is a sacred document. It's one of the most fundamentally respected documents around the world, and it protects minority rights, right? That's why we have a constitution, and that's why we have a Supreme Court, which enforces those rights. So to say that, the Special Marriage Act refers only to husband and wife, and therefore it was passed by legislature, so it is fine, that is not enough, because the law has to be constitutional. And what we as petitioners are asking the court is to say there are fundamental constitutional rights, right to equality, right to not being discriminated based on sex, right to freedom of expression, including expression of sexual orientation and identity, right to privacy, including the person that you want to marry and have a family. All of those rights are being violated. And we're not asking, I think one of the speakers earlier said that, if you read down, if you make the term more inclusive as spouse, then you're erasing man and woman, husband and wife. That is not at all the intention. It should never be done so. Those are fundamental concepts in law and also in society. What we're simply saying is adding in that understanding, adding a more inclusive definition, right?
Yeah.
So those are the few fundamental areas in law that we need to focus on.
Okay, Priyanka, one by one. I'll come back to you. You spoke for a fairly long time. Priyanka, you see, just want to ask you a question. You see, a lot of talk here has happened about society, Samaj, right? Now my point is, if you go by what is happening in the society even now, interfaith marriage is still a problem.
Yes.
Intercaste marriage is still a problem. So to what end do you keep accommodating what the society feels? I mean, I can understand any other argument, Mr. Nigam, but Samaj or society will not accept. Society has not accepted a number of things. I'll come back to you. Yeah, first,
I'll
Priyanka.
answer that.
Yeah.
I think we are also here, it is very important not to forget that nature cannot be natural. So don't you think that we people somewhere where God has made a male and a female individual, right? So don't you think somewhere now in the coming future we are going to disturb this cycle of biological feature of our country? Like where we can see, as the ma'am have mentioned, that we respect the third party gender. We already accepted them with open-handed.
So Priyanka, that will happen if nobody has babies, right?
Yeah.
Now the point is, many of the same-sex couples, they adopt.
And also, I think
Imagine,
I
that's
absolutely agree with
I'm
you.
a parent.
I have
That's
a
a
question
parent
to
thing.
ask. There are people who are already living across the genders all across. They are not living for, they are not asking for any kind of a name tags for their love relationship. Then what are we fighting for here? Like, are we really fighting for the tags that you want to call you want to be called as an individual's husband and wife of someone?
Yeah, exactly.
Are we here?
So why not? What
Then
is
why
wrong
this
with
debate? Then
just want to know from you why is that wrong?
Yeah.
Just for my understanding, why is that wrong?
There are
Because
many people,
I give you this list.
across the country who are coming in a support of this society, but there are people who are not coming straight to come to support the society. So
No, one moment. The problem that one faces when your marriage is not recognized are the following, which we listed at the beginning of the program. You cannot adopt children. You do not get host of rights of married couples. You cannot make each other nominee in insurance. You cannot buy a joint property. I mean, these are some certain things that are so basic
No,
So basic.
who said you can't buy a joint property?
I have never heard about that. I have
No,
never.
as a
I
married
have no.
No, not as a married couple.
As-
But you can buy joint
I
property.
have
as a-
mentioned
How will
it is that
Aditi
I
give posit onto her
respect every
child?
individual
Because that is the
demand they
system
have
of
been
marriage.
asking
Exactly.
for,
So
but
that is
there
what
are
I'm
things
saying.
that
He
you
wants to pass
accept
it
and there
down
are
to her
things that you
child.
deny.
One by one.
I have mentioned in my earlier debates as well that I respect every individual person who belongs to this society.
No, but then Priyanka, you know what I find
Yeah.
a little difficult to understand, Aditi and maybe Sonal can come in, is that suddenly the human race will not survive.
Absolutely.
And then we will not have people anymore in the country, right? It's that sort
The
of an
question is
argument.
I'll answer all
the-
the
One more.
questions.
Yeah.
One by one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, this whole thing about Adam and Eve and then
Because
no
God
future for the
has
society.
made a cycle of giving birth to a kid through a female, and there is a it is biologically somewhere. This is the creation by God.
Yeah, but that's
And
happening.
why are we trying to turn this nature thing into a natural thing? Why are we even looking for the?
Let's get an answer to that.
Sure.
so Sanket, I call this the "Chhod do Aanchal, Zamana kya kahega" argument. Okay, and it's been some years, some decades since this song has come out, and let me just say that if you were to read very carefully, and this is also in part to answer the question on society and where we are, and that marriage is a social evolution. If you read the all 18 or 20 odd petitions, you will see that there are so many of those petitioners who have children. They've been together 20 years. They've built lives together. They live as they've done the hard work of a marriage. Let me finish.
Sure.
Okay. Why should they not be called married? Okay. The point that you're making is that we are not entering your bedroom. So why are you coming out of the bedroom and asking this? Our lives and relationships are not just about sex. They are actually very little to do with that.
Right.
That is not why we are in court. We are in court because as Indians, there are three pillars that our families are built on: birth, death, and marriage. From the point that you are born, your parents, the one thing that their minds are set on is how you're going to get married, what is going to happen, when are you going to get settled. Okay? When I came out to my parents, I didn't just tell them I was gay. I told them, I'll never be married, I'll never have children, I'll never have the life that you wanted for me. When I've done the hard work of a marriage, when all those other petitioners have done the hard work of a marriage, why are we being stopped from calling it a marriage? There is no logical reasoning except your discomfort. Your discomfort is not valid as a way to infringe my rights.
Let's get in a response. I'll come to you.
I just want to jump up from there. Right, I think like something that from that personal example, I want to just highlight this point. Like a lot of times people say society and we are saying we are part of society. But I think you are also forgetting that our families are also affected by this particular law. You know, it's not just us. And even if I put, recent figures like 1 million Indians, you add our families to it. It's a huge number of citizens who are impacted by marriage. And this is just if I include my mother and father. I am out at my workplace right now. My colleagues, I'm out to all of them, and they very much care for me and they want to be part of my marriage. They are all watching this TV show also right now, right? It impacts them. So that's the second bit. Coming back to Sir, he spoke about statistics. I have recently been part of a presentation, watching the presentation of NHFS 5 data, which is the National Health Family Survey, data. And interestingly, I challenged them there also because they did not have any desegregation based on gender, and they did not have any ways of capturing data of marriages which are not, man and woman. So understand the way our health is being impacted is not even being captured in data because of something simple like you don't recognize our families, what families are for us, what are the systems of family for us. So I'll leave it to that. Nature and versus nurture to chalta rahega. I am also not manufactured in a factory.
I'll come back to you. Priyanka, let me ask my question.
Yeah, sure.
My question is this. Statistics and the complicated arguments that are being presented here, which are very important. The bottom line is this. What will the society say? Society's feeling versus someone's right. Right? Imagine this playing out in a home, in a house, where a child is feeling nervous how do I confront my parents? How do I tell my parents about my orientation?
Yeah.
Should I care for what they feel over what is my right? Right? This simple answer.
And so many of us can't trust our families, you know.
See,
It's such a huge
Sanket,
impact.
I just want to add
As we
one
all
point
agree on
which will
this,
make
there are kind of
5
workshops
seconds.
are going on.
5 seconds.
There are already kind of workshops are going on where we are giving people who support to this community are giving the awareness to the kids nowadays. But the point is, being an Hindu activist, being an Hindu, I like not a Hindu. I would say being an activist, Hindu activist. I always support my community. I think as a religious person, I would never support this, because I believe in the cycle of nature. And I don't mind people call it, don't stop calling it nature, because I do believe in nature. I belong to a society where we don't support this. I don't support this, and I do have a right to
So
agree
while
and
you
disagree
have
on
the
this
right to
something.
believe in what you do,
Yeah, but
can
I don't
others have
respect,
the right?
I don't disrespect also. I respect you as an individual. I
Ma'am,
respect
you
you
are
but
disrespecting.
I am
You
not
are
disrespecting. No,
disrespecting.
everybody have a right to disagree on, agree and
Ma'am,
disagree on
if you
something.
slap someone across the face and then you say, I'm not slapping
I'm
you,
not
doesn't
saying
stop.
that I hate you as a person. I'm not saying I hate you because you belong
I
to this
don't hate
community.
you, but I don't
don't
want to
hate
give you
each other,
rights.
please.
I don't hate
No,
you, but I won't give you rights.
let
I
me
don't
go
hate you, but you
ahead.
can't get married. I don't hate you, but you guys are
We have
unnatural.
raised many.
Yeah. Some of our guests via satellite want to come in. I think I heard the voice of Raga De Silva, did I? Yes, Raga, you wanted to come in.
Yeah, I'm just like, when I listen to people like Priyanka, with due respect, I just think, oh my God, if this is the society, it's a very dangerous society, and this is exactly why we are fighting for our rights. This is exactly why we want change. That word respect, oh my God, you have no understanding. If I stood across your face, Priyanka, and said to you exactly what you were saying on TV and say, oh, but I have respect for you individually.
I do have a legal right to agree or disagree on something. If I am not comfortable with something, I've definitely said that I'm not comfortable with this.
Absolutely.
That is why I
Yeah.
said it's dangerous to have people
I
like
have
you
not
in
even
society.
mentioned one that I have not even mentioned once that I hate this community. I, as a
you don't
religious
have to
person,
say
I
it.
don't support this community.
You don't have to use the word hate, but you said
Yeah.
that. It's very evident.
That's your own opinion for me. Thank you so much.
Can I also add
sure,
one
of
more?
course.
Yes,
It's
Mr.
important.
Joydeep and
It's
Rahul Ishwar,
important,
and
you
then
know.
we'll come back to the studio. Yeah.
I
Joydeep.
just want to add one word because it was mentioned, the Hindu religion. You know, I'm a Hindu. My daughter was born 2 years ago. We had an Annaprashan ceremony. My entire family participated. My friends participated. You know, we did all of the Hindu ceremonies. My father is a Hindu. He died 2 years ago during COVID. He supports my family. He supported my family. He accepted my husband as his son-in-law for 20 years, you know. So that's also Hindu culture. And if you look at the history of
And
Hindu
I
religion,
really want to know
there's
that
many
where this is
examples of
mentioned
gender
in Hindu
expression
culture
being
that
varied.
we support such marriages. I really want to know that. Is there any
Prithvi
somewhere
Vasa
mentioned that we
Ramayana
support? There are already 8 kind of marriages exist.
I'm saying I as a Hindu,
But
also
there is
have the
nowhere
right
written in the
to
Hindu
have a
culture
different
that
view,
these
okay?
kinds of marriages are supported.
Ma'am, do you want us
But
to
there were,
stop being
you know,
disrespectful?
I don't think we want to go into debate on religion.
Sangeji, if I can just add one
I
thing.
as a Hindu
Yeah,
also have
okay. Rahul Ishwar,
Just one submission.
in the name of religion, we have
Being a
seen
Hindu-
that the society has not been accepting of interfaith, intercaste, and that problem still exists. I know this may appear for the society as a little bit more complicated than just interfaith or intercaste marriages. But the point is, are we just a little too uncomfortable dealing with this,
that is there. You know, let
this
us
matter?
concede that.
And that's why we would want it to not happen. It's
That's
an
definitely-
uncomfortable thing.
Yeah, there is an amount of discomfort in this, and if you check the history of India, we have been far more tolerant and accepting of the variation or differences in sexual orientation. India in our history has been more accepting. That's a historical reality. We cannot deny that. Unlike our Semitic friends, brothers and sisters who believes in the idea of Sodom and Gomorrah being destroyed and all, we don't have that scriptural thing per se. But we have been more accepting. But there are still inhibitions. Maybe you can argue it is because of the imposition of Victorian morality. Earlier India was different. But presently there is a huge section of people who are having apprehension. Unless you deal with that discomfort, unless you engage with it, unless you debate, discuss with it, with the help of mainstream media, civil society, different organizations, NGOs, that discomfort is always going to be there. Just because a legal recognition comes, the discomfort is not going to go. That's the reason why larger...
Then what does one do? That's the point.
continue the debates. Rome was never built in a day. So it's always a matter of debate.
Or you're building a case for another debate. Okay.
Can I?
Yeah. We are quickly coming back to the studio. Deshatan Nigam and Professor Bhatt.
See, number of issues have been raised. One which is very important, that it is evolving. Who decides it has evolved and how much it has evolved? TV debates, it can create an awareness but cannot decide.
Of course.
Or the courts can discuss it, be very argumentative about it, but cannot reach a conclusion how much it has been involved and who's got to decide. Therefore, it has got to go to the parliament, to the people, where the will of the people is reflected. Debate, discuss. Till then, you've got to create awareness. And secondly, let me point out, if somebody said parliament has failed, it's not doing its function. If the elected governments fail, what do? They go back to the people. People punish them by not electing them. That's the parliamentary democracy that we have. The parliaments have been performing their functions. They take up issues which are relevant for the majority of the people, because that's the way democracy functions. Because people have found this to be one of the ills of democracy, but that's the best system that we have.
Okay.
And secondly, the statistical data that people talk about, laws are not made on the basis of statistical data. Never. Because you don't do referendums here in this country for every issue. That entire country votes. So then my argument will again take you to the parliament. So
I have understood your argument. You say that a legal intervention will not work.
All the examples that you cited.
My point is, if Parliament passes a law and society, your contention is that society will not accept. If Parliament passes a law and society does not accept,
let me answer. The laws passed by the Parliament reflects the will of the people. Because they are elected, they get the feedback from the people. Those laws are generally accepted. And all the ones that you cited, say dowry prohibition, it was through Parliament. Child marriage prohibition, it was through Parliament. Interfaith, intercaste marriages was allowed through the acts of the Parliament. So everything went through Parliament.
Okay.
Therefore,
Sonal as well as Aditi. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to say to sir that, so by your logic, the Parliament where we have already approached them, when they refuse us, we want to keep waiting for a government who actually looks at minority to listen to us before we get our rights. If we follow that logic, minority communities will never get their rights. Right? So that is one bit of it. Second bit is that is why you have three pillars. You have media, you have the judiciary, and you have the parliament specifically for these reasons. And the way the constitution is formed for these reasons, that minority rights are not trampled on because of majority politics. And we find ourselves right in the center, and we did what was the only roadway open to us, which is approach the court. Aditi.
Let me answer. Just. Our constitution does not define minority, including LGBTQ. First, remember that. First, you get that amendment done in the constitution. Then you call yourself a minority. Just by calling yourself a minority will not give you a constitutional status or a legal status. One. And secondly, the issues that we are saying, how long do you have to wait? You have got to create awareness in the society. Believe me, you got to create awareness. Once the law comes, we all will accept it. And all those laws that people have been citing have come through Parliament.
Okay. I've run out of time, but Professor Bhatt wanted to come in.
Very quickly, I want to just make two short points. One is that my concern is that the way the deliberations are taking place in the Honorable Court, there time and again, first of all, the petitioners and their lawyers, they are shying away discussing, because see, when you are talking of redefining marriage, you can't, keep the personal laws aside. So they are time and again saying they don't want to touch the personal laws. In spite of that, it is only the Hindu Marriage Act which is being quoted time and again, and references have been made that some amendments may be required to made over here. While keeping very silent on Muslim personal laws, on Christian personal laws, Parsi. So this is something which is a serious concern. The other concern, which I already said, that women will be at a receiving end, with this kind of you have to make changes so that their rights which exist,
I'm glad
they need
that we
to
are
be
at
protected.
least discussing.
Yes.
Right?
And third point that I want to make is that in the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 16, even today what it says is that, a man and a woman coming of age, irrespective of their nationality, race and religion, can marry and, have a family. So even, when you are talking of you not only in the country, but even globally also,
Sure.
this issue is something which still requires to be addressed and discussed and deliberated.
And I'm glad that we are doing that right now. We'll do future programs as well. But the point is that it's important to create that awareness. And I feel through the course of this discussion, I must say that we got to learn and hear a great degree of points. And this context of society that is given, I leave that to the better judgment of the viewers to decide whether society will decide on your behalf on what you feel is right. Thank you very much for joining us. We are stopping for a short break at this moment. News continues on the other side.